After saying those words, Marchioness Yi walked away, leaving Wang Chong deep in contemplation behind. "Young master, who is Zhou Ju?" Zhao Jingdian asked. All he gathered from the previous conversation was that the person named Zhou Ju seemed to be a formidable figure. "Zhou Ju is the head of the 9 gongzis of the capital, and a peer of my second brother. He has once crossed fists with my second brother and the fight ended in a draw," Wang Chong said. "Ah!" Zhou Jingdian exclaimed in shock. Even though he wasn't too sure who Zhou Ju was, he had heard of Wang Chong's second brother, Wang Bei. Wang Bei was once regarded as the most likely candidate to inherit Duke Zhou's legacy. Regardless of whether it was his wits or his martial arts, he was far above that of his peers. In the capital, Wang Bei's reputation was immense. Even the Yao clan's Yao Feng had been taught a lesson by him. Otherwise, the latter wouldn't have gone to the extent of sending a thug, Ma Zhou, to frame Wang Chong in order to vent his anger. Wang Bei was an existence who no one dared to cross in the capital, and many thought that he would achieve great things in the future. Regardless of whether it was among the scions or the nobles, there was no one who dared to trifle with him. If only he wasn't afflicted with the berserker syndrome. Wang Chong lowered his head solemnly. In truth, Wang Chong hadn't revealed all that he knew about Zhou Ju to Zhao Jingdian. He knew that even though Zhou Ju looked like an honest and upright person on the surface, hidden deep inside was a heart filled with callousness. What made things worse was that he possessed astonishing talent. Second sister Wang Zhuyan, Marchioness Yi, and the others were also ranked among the top in the capital, but they were still a far way off from matching Zhou Ju. Zhou Ju was in a class of his own. On top of that, despite his apparent lack of backing, there had been some rumors of him being adopted as the foster son of King Qi. Although Zhou Ju had never acknowledged the rumor, he had never denied it either. That being said, there were evidences that Zhou Ju was able to enter the King Qi residence freely. Besides, King Qi seemed to treat him exceptionally well too. At the very least, the powerful martial arts that Zhou Ju was equipped with definitely came from King Qi. Otherwise, given Marchioness Yi's background, there would be nothing for her to fear. None of those whose names were put alongside second brother Wang Bei were mediocre. Speaking of which, young master, what is the background of that lady from before? Marchioness Yi? How old is she for her to be conferred as a marquis? Does our great Tang confer such titles on youths as well? Not to mention a lady? Zhou Jingdian rubbed the wound on his chest as he asked. He, Jingdian, you don't live in the capital before, so you might be unaware of it. She's known as Little Marchioness Yi, the daughter of Marchioness Yi. Of the marquises in the empire, Marchioness Yi is the only hereditary female nobility. Back then, Emperor Gaozu has decreed that as long as Great Tang exists, the title of Marchioness Yi will be passed down from generation to generation. An edict was even bestowed to enforce it. Thus, despite her age, everyone still addresses her as Marchioness Yi as her position was already confirmed. It has been decided from the moment of her birth. Wang Chong chuckled. In the Great Tang Empire, hereditary titles were mostly of the level of the dukes. On top of that, they were mostly the descendants of the group who built Great Tang along with Emperor Gaozu. Marquises shouldn't possess the qualifications to pass down their nobility. The only marquis title that was hereditary in the Great Tang Empire, not to mention a marchioness, was Marchioness Yi. I see. Zhao Jingdian came to a realization. Wang Chong chuckled silently. In truth, he didn't expect for Marchioness Yi to appear in Kunwu training camp. At the very least, such a matter didn't happen in his previous life. Too many things had changed from his previous life, but nevertheless, Marchioness Yi joining Kunwu training camp should be nothing but beneficial to him. On top of that, Marchioness Yi's appearance had also reminded Wang Chong of a crucial fact. The establishment of the 3 great training camps was a groundbreaking affair for Great Tang, and he wasn't the only one interested in it. Even experts like Marchioness Yi were getting involved as well. Let's go. There's a limit to the number of trainees in the 3 great training camps, and if we're late, we might just end up being eliminated. Wang Chong beckoned Zhao Jingdian, and the duo started ascending the mountain once more. The number of people at Kunwu training camp was astonishing. Tents and humans could be seen everywhere despite the massive size of the mountain it was situated on. It was always the most crowded on the first day. Let's go. We should clear the first round of examinations first. Wang Chong said. There were many Imperial Army members stationed across the mountain, and the primary selection examination was conducted at guard posts. There were basic requirements on one's cultivation and strength to qualify for Kunwu training camp. If one couldn't even meet the basic requirements, there was no need for one to participate in the latter selection rounds. The primary selection consisted of 3 trials. First, the strength trial. The trial involved the lifting of a provided boulder, and any who were incapable of doing so would be directly eliminated. Next, the punching trial. Any individual incapable of performing at least one punching routine would be directly eliminated. Last but not least, the third trial. It was a random test to determine the true battle prowess of a martial artist. I'll pass the trial as long as I can overcome 3 of your punches? Wang Chong easily passed the first 2 trials, and he was currently standing before the examiner of the final trial. Yes, as long as you can dodge 3 of my punches, I'll consider you to have passed the third trial. The one who spoke was a man in his 20s. He had an impassive expression, and it didn't seem like he was from the Imperial Army. Rather, he seemed to be an itinerant martial artist recruited by the royal court to oversee this examination. I understand. Wang Chong chuckled. It seemed like his final trial was a test of agility. Are you ready? As soon as that man finished speaking, his fist immediately whipped out. Boom! Furious wind ravaged in the surroundings, but before he could get far, a fist appeared right before his face, merely a hair strand away from striking him. The surroundings fell completely silent. Everyone stared at Wang Chong, flabbergasted. On the other hand, that man's complexion turned extremely awful. You've passed the primary selection. Please continue up the mountain. With a reddened face, the man bowed and obediently backed to the side. Thank you for going easy on me. Wang Chong flung his robe back and stepped forth from the crowd with a smile. It might have been difficult for him to pass tests of this level in the past, but after several months of hard work, these tests were nothing more than a walk in the park to him. With his Origin Energy Tier 7 cultivation, even though he had never cultivated any speed type or dexterity type secret art, his Dragon Tier Root Bone granted him speed, endurance, reflexes, and nimbleness far exceeding that of ordinary humans. He could easily pass a trial of this level with just his raw physical speed. Taking a glance behind, Wang Chong saw that Zhao Jingdian was still in the midst of queuing for his examination. Thus, he chose to proceed up ahead first. Having passed the primary selections, the main show was up ahead. Challenging the instructors. There was a limit to the slots for the first batch of Kunwu training camp trainees. The instructors recruited by the royal court at the peak held the fate of everyone here in their hands. Every single instructor was allocated a fixed number of students they could take in, and once they have met their quota, they would leave immediately. When all of the instructors have met their quota, the recruitment process would come to an official end. There was also a trick to be accepted into the camp. Most people randomly choose an instructor as soon as they reach the peak, not knowing that the selection of instructors also played a crucial role in the examination. Different instructors had different styles. Some were skilled in charging at the forefront to break the enemy's formation. Some were skilled in the art of slaughter on the battlefield. Some were skilled in one-to-one fights. Some were skilled in cavalry fights. Most people were unaware that the instructors of the 3 great training camps were hand-picked elite military officials, and all of them were veterans of the battlefield. It was only many years later, when some things were exposed, did the alumni of the 3 great training camps understand the significance of their instructors. To the future of the trainees, choosing a correct instructor was as important as getting hold of a top-notch cultivation technique. The reason why Wang Chong had Wei Hao look for the bearded plump man was for this very reason. Wei Hao's mountain ascension formula, complemented with the plump instructor's unique prowess in charging on the battlefield, could amplify his strength. Similarly, Wang Chong was also looking for an instructor suited for him. Kunwu training camp is very different from how I remembered it. I wonder if that instructor is still here, Wang Chong thought. There were all kinds of instructors in the 3 great training camps, but the one whom Wang Chong was looking for was an extremely unique instructor. He doesn't teach the trainees on how to charge on the battlefield, nor does he teach them how to fight on a cavalry, or even how to clash squarely with other soldiers on the battlefield. What he taught was the most advanced art of commanding. In other words, of all of the instructors, he was a hidden gem, and no one on the entire mountain, with the exception of Wang Chong, knew about it. Based on what Wang Chong recalled, this instructor kept an extremely low profile throughout his stay at Kunwu, and he only remained here for 3 years. Thus, 3 years from now, there wouldn't be anyone teaching this skill in the training camp anymore. And when that person's identity was exposed, countless people were filled with regret. However, even though that person kept a low profile, it was by no means an easy feat to come under his tutelage. Of all of the instructors, his conditions for recruitment were the harshest. Students who would easily pass with the other instructors were all flatly rejected by him. However, the main reason why Wang Chong wanted to come under him wasn't because of his art of commanding. Rather, it was due to his authority as the highest-ranked instructor in Kunwu training camp. There were several ultimate arts within the 3 great training camps which would go missing in the future that could only be obtained through him. Other than that, the strict rules of the 3 great training camps were a bother as well. Once one became a trainee, one would have to attend all trainings, morning practices, and sparring sessions. It was unavoidable regardless which instructor one came under. For the others, such rules may not be much of a hindrance, but that wasn't the case for Wang Chong. The cultivation technique that Wang Chong had set his eyes upon, be it the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art, or art of God and demon obliteration, were not techniques that could be learned or mastered through these sessions. Wang Chong's level could no longer be raised through routine training. Thus, he didn't wish to be constrained by such rules. Of all of the instructors, only that person was the most lax. As long as one passed his test, one would be exempt from all of the routine training sessions. All in all, Wang Chong found this instructor's policies to be the most aligned with his preferences. There were many people on the mountain, be it the participating examinees or the Imperial Army Guards. Thus, it wasn't easy for Wang Chong to find the instructor he had set his eyes upon among the huge crowd. "You fool! Didn't you hear what I just said?" Just as Wang Chong was searching for the hidden instructor, he suddenly heard a slightly harsh and suppressed voice. "But Gongzi, this is my only chance." A pleading voice responded. "Humph, I don't care whether this is your only chance or not. Don't forget that my father is in control of your father's livelihood. If you refuse to follow my commands, you can start packing up for your return to the countryside. At that time, don't blame me for not warning you in advance. That fellow is extremely powerful, so you better keep this in mind. No matter what happens, you must severely injure him for me. I know what you're capable of, so you can definitely do it." The harsh voice from before threatened menacingly. "Humph, just another scion bullying those who come from humbler backgrounds. It is one thing if it is somewhere else, but to dare to do it within the 3 great training camps, he sure is brazen." Wang Chong sneered coldly within. He had heard of some people making use of their family's authority to force others to act as they please so as to give themselves an edge during the examination. As it was hard to trace down these methods and they weren't explicitly forbidden in the rules either, the instructors had no way of dealing with them. Wang Chong didn't expect to really stumble by such an incident. Wang Chong quickly turned around and looked toward the origin of the voice. There were many people walking about Kunwu training camp, but there were very few who paid that group any attention. Across the crowd, Wang Chong saw 3 haughty figures standing before a shabbily dressed teenager. The teenager was kneeling on the ground, grabbing onto the leg of one of the men, pleading earnestly with all of his might. Despair could be seen in his eyes. Initially, Wang Chong didn't pay it much heed, but after seeing the other party's appearance, he suddenly jolted. "Why, is it him?" Wang Chong stood there in a daze as some memories surfaced in his mind. In his previous life, the Kunwu training camp became the birthplace of countless rising generals. The number of great generals who walked out of Kunwu training camp was more than enough to light up the skies of Great Tang for a very long time. That was the era in which Great Tang was at its greatest, as well as the era which Great Tang showed the final glimpse of its greatness. Back then, while all those brilliant stars were lighting up the skies, Wang Chong was only an ordinary civilian. By the time Wang Chong's era came, they had already fallen. This was why Wang Chong had never really met or interacted with them. This was also one of the deep regrets in Wang Chong's heart. Despite being the final Grand Marshal of Great Tang, he didn't have many talented generals who could hold their own ground on their own. This had proven fatal in the catastrophic war. Unable to prop up the situation by himself, Wang Chong could only hold on for a little over a decade before complete defeat. If he could alter history and rise during the era of these great generals, if he had so many great generals under his command, perhaps everything would have been different. This was the main reason why Wang Chong paid particular attention to the future great generals from the 3 great training camps, especially toward those from Kunwu training camp. Among those rising generals in Kunwu training camp, there was a person who was unique even among the group. That person specialized in surprise attacks. Even among the many rising generals in Great Tang, there were very few great generals who possessed aptitude in that field. When Great Tang fell into an era of darkness and chaos, when the Great Tang military was often in a disadvantageous position, his surprise attacks often created opportunities for his allies. In that era, there were many who pinned their hopes on him. But just like a comet, his brilliance only shone for a short moment before disappearing altogether. His inferior martial arts had become his Achilles heel, and one inappropriate command ordering for a frontal assault had become the direct cause of his death. If one were to trace back the main reason for his death, it would tie back to the fact that he had followed the wrong master. Because of this, countless people had sighed in lamentation. Sun Zhiming, looking at the kneeling examinee, a thought flashed across Wang Chong's head. The other person who commanded Sun Zhiming to forcibly injure his potential contender, so as to pave his way into Kunwu, was most probably Deng Mingxin. He was also the one whose flawed command directly resulted in Sun Zhiming's death. To think that it would be them. It was one thing if Wang Chong had never encountered them, but now that he had, he couldn't simply just let things be. If he didn't recall wrongly, Sun Zhiming would fail the first round of recruitment due to Deng Mingxin. It would be another 6 months before he finally manages to enter Kunwu training camp. Even though it was only a difference of 6 months, this small-time difference made a world of a difference. Many instructors chose to take on only a single batch of recruits, so the future recruits lost the opportunity to come under them. On top of that, most of the instructors who took multiple batches of recruits chose to focus a majority of their efforts on the first batch, thus neglecting the others. On top of that, some of the better instructors were also promoted in the meantime. Furthermore, as the 3 Great Training Camps initiative had only just begun, the royal court was paying particular attention to it, so a huge quantity of resources was devoted to the training camps. That would not be the case for future batches. Thus, for those who craved for success, getting into the camp in the very first batch was of paramount importance. Enough! Get up! As these thoughts flashed across Wang Chong's head, a glint flashed across his eye as he strode over. Sun Zhiming, get up. There's no need for you to plead with him. As a man, how can you plead with this kind of despicable scum? Wang Chong grabbed Sun Zhiming's elbow and pulled him up from the ground. Dumbfounded, Sun Zhiming stared blankly at the youth who had suddenly appeared before him. He had never seen this person before, and he had no idea why the other party knew his name. What is going on? Bastard! Who the hell do you think you are? How dare you interfere in our affairs? Who the heck are you? This has nothing to do with you, so I advise you to not get involved and just scram. While Sun Zhiming was dazed by the abrupt happenings, Deng Mingxin and the others had already flown into a rage. The trio was in the midst of teaching Sun Zhiming a lesson, and Wang Chong's intervention had displeased them. The 3 great training camps were of utmost importance to them as well, and anybody who tried to wreck their plans would be their mortal foe. If I were you, I would leave at this very moment. Deng Mingxin stepped forward and glared at Wang Chong furiously, his voice dripping with hostile intent. Deng Mingxin, if I were you, I would scram at this very moment. I am not someone you can trifle with. Wang Chong sneered coldly. Bastard! How dare you talk to young Master Deng like that? One of Deng Mingxin's lackeys couldn't hold himself back anymore and shot a punch straight toward Wang Chong. Hong long long. A cloud of dust rose and cloaked the area. No one saw what Wang Chong did, but Deng Mingxin's lackey spun in the air before crashing heavily onto the ground. The immense force of his fall caused the entire ground to tremble for a short moment. Putting aside Deng Mingxin, even the examinees in the area were stunned. Only then did Sun Jiming finally come to a realization. He stared at the youth before him in shock, realizing that the other party probably came from a lustrous background. "Who in the world are you?" Deng Mingxin narrowed his eyes in fury. Guards, guards! Someone is attacking other examinees." Deng Mingxin's other lackey reacted swiftly to the situation and shouted loudly to the top of the mountain. This was the first day of the training camps, and anybody who dared to make a move on the other examinees would have to face the wrath of the Imperial Guards. In fact, it was even possible for one to be even stripped of one's qualification as an examinee. "Who is it? Don't you know that fighting is forbidden here?" The commotion had already attracted the attention of several Imperial Army members. They rushed up to the group like ferocious tigers, encircling the group in an instant. Every single one of them had an impatient look on their faces, and it was clear that they wouldn't hesitate to get physical if they had to. "Humph! It's him. I don't know what's wrong with him. He just suddenly rushed forward and attacked us." Upon seeing the arrival of the Imperial Army members, Deng Mingxin's lackey pointed to Wang Chong and sneered coldly. Deng Mingxin didn't say anything, but his eyes shone with glee and excitement. "I had already told you to scram, but sadly, you simply refused to listen to me and chose to get involved instead." Deng Mingxin sneered coldly. Against an oaf like Wang Chong, there was no need for him to make a move at all. All he had to do was to play some underhanded tricks to teach him a harsh lesson. Without this bit of wits, how could he possibly maintain a firm grip on Sun Jiming such that the latter would never dare to retaliate? "Is that so? I've already told you that I'm not someone you can trifle with." Wang Chong sneered coldly, and before everyone's gazes, he whipped out a token from his waist. 2 simple words were inscribed on the token, but it made the faces of the spectating crowd lose their color. "King Song. This is King Song's token." Shocked exclaims echoed in the area. The arrogant Deng Mingxin and group suddenly felt as though their eyes were being pricked with needles. Their complexion swiftly turned awful. "I know who he is Wang Chong. My gosh! He really came to Kunwu training camp." An uproar broke out. There was someone who finally put everything together and identified Wang Chong. Upon realizing that the person before him was Wang Chong, Deng Mingxin's heart abruptly turned cold. He finally understood why the other party dared to interfere in his affairs. However, it was already too late. It was as though someone had placed a mountain on his heart, weighing him down. So it's Wang Gongzi. Given Wang Gongzi's character, it is impossible for him to attack other examinees. What is wrong with you all? How dare you all make a move in Kunwu training camp? Are you all dying to get disqualified? Take him away. How could he be so brazen as to make a move on Chong Gongzi in the training camp? Strip him of his qualification as an examinee. The words of the Imperial Army members made the faces of the duo turn even more awful. Even in front of such a huge crowd, the Imperial Army members were blatantly siding with Wang Chong. The guards grabbed the unconscious lad on the ground and dragged him down the mountain. Just like that, he was kicked out from the first round of recruitment. "Gongzi!" The face of the other lackey beside Deng Mingxin turned livid. "Right, Gongzi, if you have the time, please try to make a few more with steel swords. 1 sword a month is really too little." After walking a dozen zhang away, one of the Imperial Army members suddenly turned around and said impassionately. In the Imperial Army, regardless of which squadron one was in, be it whether one was stationed in the royal palace or outside, there was not a single soldier who didn't know of the Wut's steel sword. After all, even the Grand Marshal of the Imperial Army had spent his money to buy Wang Chong's death abyss. "I understand." Wang Chong smiled and nodded his head. Abusing his authority for the first time, it felt kind of refreshing. The number of great generals who came from here was definitely more than sufficient to light up the entire sky. It is a Chinese superstition that one can determine the fate of a country or such via the skies. For example, the emperor would have a star belonging to him, and if it dims, it might mean that disaster is going to befall the empire. Similarly, generals have a star themselves as well. "Wang Chong, you're Chong Gongzi." Sun Jiming became dumbstruck the moment he realized this fact. Wang Chong's bravery in speaking up against the regional commander's policy despite the hostility from the Hu and his imprisonment had become something no one didn't know of in Great Tang. Sun Jiming didn't expect the one who appeared and stood up to Deng Mingxin for him would be that Wang Chong. In an instant, Sun Jiming's heart began to beat wildly in agitation. Wang Gongzi, there's no grudge between us, so why must you stand against me? Deng Mingxin glared at Wang Chong with a dark expression. Upon learning of Wang Chong's identity and seeing King Song's token in his hand, it was clear that he had picked a fight with the wrong person this time. Where did your arrogance go to? Why? Are you going to give in now? Wang Chong said coldly as he nonchalantly tidied his robe. But regardless, I only have a message for you. Sun Jiming's affairs shall be my affair from now on. These words left an incomparably grave expression on Deng Mingxin's face. Wang Gongzi, do you really intend to go to such extents? Deng Mingxin took in a deep breath. Knowing that there was no way to settle this matter amiably anymore, he decided to just go all in. My background might be inferior to you, but there's nothing for you to be gleeful about. There are plenty of people who can trample over you in this Kunwu training camp. King Song might possess immense influence, but there's still a King Qi standing above him. Sun Jiming, you better think it over and decide whether you'll go with me or him. You should know better the result of offending King Qi. By then, it won't just be a matter of your father being stripped of his position. He was determined to keep Sun Jiming. It wasn't just for the matter of whether he could get into Kunwu training camp or not. Rather, Sun Jiming was the only talent he had received from his father. Even that person had said that Sun Jiming possessed immense talent and instructed him to grasp onto him tightly. As long as Sun Jiming remained under him, it wouldn't be difficult for him to accomplish great things in the future. Furthermore, he was also depending on Sun Jiming to join King Qi's faction. He didn't mind Wang Chong teaching his lackeys a lesson, and he was fine with his pride being trampled upon as well. However, Sun Jiming was one thing he couldn't compromise on. Humph! Seeing that Deng Mingxin was still threatening Sun Jiming at this moment, Wang Chong's rage flurried. If Sun Jiming continued to follow Deng Mingxin, it would only be a matter of time before he was destroyed. Since Deng Mingxin was willing to use his background and King Qi's name to force Sun Jiming into submission, then Wang Chong didn't mind using his lustrous background to teach that despicable scum a lesson. Deng Mingxin, I finally understand why you dare to speak so arrogantly. I see, so you've decided to side with King Qi. However, do you think that that makes a difference? Wang Chong sneered coldly. Since Deng Mingxin was unwilling to release Sun Jiming and was using his background to threaten the latter, the other party shouldn't blame him for getting nasty. Humph. Deng Mingxin, if I recall correctly, your father's name is Deng Zhou, right? Fine. You and your father can return to the countryside tomorrow. Those words made Deng Mingxin's face darken. Wang Chong, stop bragging here. Who do you think that you're scaring? I'm only afraid that you don't have the influence to do so. Heh, we'll see tomorrow then. Wang Chong sneered. His big uncle, Wang Zhen, was an influential official in the royal court, and King Song was also reinstated into his former positions. As long as the two collaborated with one another, it was a walk in the park to send a minor official back to his hometown. Deng Mingxin's father, Deng Zhou, was an official in the Bureau of Personnel, and he wielded the authority over the livelihood of the officials. It was through this influence that the Deng clan was able to hold onto Sun Jiming tightly. It would be interesting to see what Deng Mingxin would threaten Sun Jiming with once Deng Zhou falls. Sun Jiming, don't worry. Regardless of what happens, I'll be by your side. So just rest assured and do your best in the examination. As for Deng Mingxin, the person named Deng Zhou will disappear from the Bureau of Personnel from tomorrow onward, so you don't have to worry about him threatening you anymore. Wang Chong replied calmly as he patted Sun Jiming's shoulder. He exuded an aura which instinctively made one wanted to believe him. The current Wang clan had just reborn and all of its members were united along the same front. On top of that, King Song and Consort Taijin were standing behind the Wang clan as well. Protecting a Sun Jiming wasn't a problem at all. Gongzi, thank you. Sun Jiming bowed deeply in gratitude. The reputation of Duke Zhou was resounding. There was no one in Central Plains who had never heard of that name. If Wang Clan were to stand up for them, there would really be no need for him to worry about his father's matter anymore. Bastard! Sun Jiming, you better not regret your decision today. Upon seeing this sight, how could Deng Mingxin still not understand Sun Jiming's choice? His face turned livid, and he furiously flung his sleeves backward and left. Given that Sun Jiming had already chosen Wang Chong, there was nothing else he could do. If he were to remain here, he would only embarrass himself further. Gongzi! Seeing Deng Mingxin leave, the other lackey hurriedly followed him with a darkened face. Wang Chong chuckled internally as he watched the two departing figures. It takes a villain to deal with a villain. To deal with someone with Deng Mingxin, Wang Chong didn't mind playing the role of a villain. Most of the people in Kunwu training camp were ordinary civilians and the offsprings of minor officials. Toward them, Wang Chong would never flaunt his background. But if someone wanted to use his influence to gain an unfair advantage over others, then Wang Chong wouldn't mind using his as well to teach that person a lesson. Sun Jiming, you possess good talent, but your root bone is slightly lacking. After the examination ends, come and look for me. I'll impart you a panther bone cultivation technique. Wang Chong said. Learning martial arts was something progressive. It wasn't that Wang Chong was unwilling to impart him a higher-level root bone cultivation technique, but that Sun Jiming hadn't even reached the most basic panther bone. There was no use imparting him with a tiger bone cultivation technique given his lack of foundation. Thank you, Gongzi. Delighted, Sun Jiming stood up and bowed deeply. Root bone cultivation technique had always been confined within the doors of the general and minister clans. Sun Jiming knew that his talent was above average, but his mediocre root bone had tied him down. There was once an elder who had told him that if he could make up for this flaw, his future would surely be boundless. This was the reason why Sun Jiming was determined to enter Kunwu training camp. Sun Jiming didn't expect Wang Chong to be willing to impart the secret art of cultivating one's panther bone to him. There's no need to thank me. Also, if possible, I recommend you to learn a movement technique as well. Even though the speed of a cavalry is incredible, it doesn't make one invulnerable. After all, one should consider the possibility of one's mount being killed in battle. Movement technique? Sun Jiming was taken aback. He didn't expect Wang Chong to abruptly bring up this matter. Wang Chong simply chuckled mysteriously. There were many reasons to Sun Jiming's death. An unwise command from a superior, his weak cultivation, all these had played a contributing role to his eventual demise. Back then, when Wang Chong first heard of Sun Jiming's affairs, based on his instincts as the Grand Marshal of the Central Plains, he sensed another fatal flaw in Sun Jiming. He didn't pay much importance to the cultivation of movement techniques. To be fair, the charging speed of a steel cavalry was formidable. As long as one possessed a good mount, it shouldn't matter whether one learned movement techniques or not. But once one's mount was killed, the lack of agility would surely prove to be fatal. From the inception of Great Tang, there were countless great generals who found themselves surrounded by bulks of enemies. However, with their unparalleled cultivation, they were often able to charge out of the encirclement. But Sun Jiming was different. Under the circumstance that his mount was killed and he was tightly surrounded, his rate of survival was a flat 0. It was impossible for him to even last until the arrival of reinforcements. The circumstances of a battlefield were ever-changing. Even though a dense encirclement of enemies was difficult to overcome, if one possessed an outstanding movement technique, this dense encirclement could become beneficial to one's escape instead. Sun Jiming's expertise lay in conducting surprise raids. As such, the possibility of him falling into an encirclement was much higher as compared to any other commanders. If he didn't rid himself of the bad habit of underestimating movement techniques, in the end, he would still walk down the same path. There were very little people of Sun Jiming's caliber. Wang Chong didn't wish to lose a talent just like that. Wang Chong didn't stay for long, and he soon disappeared amidst the crowd. If he were to overemphasize the matter, it might have the reverse effect instead. Movement technique. Behind, Sun Jiming mumbled to himself. Wang Chong had truly shown him too many unbelievable things. For one, the other party actually knew him and Deng Mingxin. And that wasn't just it. More importantly, he even knew that Deng Mingxin's father was an official in the Bureau of Personnel. Sun Zhiming found this unbelievable. However, there was one thing that was clear: Wang Chong was here to help him. That Gongzi is truly unfathomable, Sun Zhiming thought. Even though he had no idea why Wang Chong had told him about the matter regarding movement technique, he chose to note it down. Harboring such thoughts, Sun Zhiming soon pulled his spirit together and started walking up the mountain. Gongzi? Who is that person? Zhao Jingdian walked over from the crowd as he glanced at Sun Zhiming's departing back with a look of bewilderment. He had witnessed the entire proceeding from the side, and all along, he thought that Wang Chong and Sun Zhiming were old acquaintances. However, judging from the conversation of the duo afterward, that didn't seem to be the case. That person, will become our ally on the battlefield in the future. Wang Chong chuckled. The future had already changed. Even though Wang Chong didn't know where it was headed, he felt that it was probably headed somewhere good. Pulling Zhao Jingdian along with him, Wang Chong proceeded up the hill. However, the matter with Sun Zhiming had reminded him of the countless future great generals lying all over this Kunwu training camp. Perhaps he could make use of his knowledge of the future to change some people and some affairs. He just might be able to preserve some talents for Great Tang through such, thus retaining some additional power for Great Tang in the future catastrophe. Wait here for a moment. Thinking so, Wang Chong dived into the crowd. Before Zhao Jingdian could react, Wang Chong had already disappeared. The latter stood with a confused expression on his face, baffled by Wang Chong's actions. Around 2 hours later, Wang Chong finally reappeared before Zhao Jingdian once more. This time, his expression seemed more relaxed. He seemed to have achieved something significant during this period of time. Jingdian, follow me. I found that instructor. And thus, the duo rushed toward the peak of the mountain. In the Kunwu training camp, several hundred zhang away from the peak of the mountain, a middle-aged instructor stood on top of a stone with his hands behind his back. Unlike other instructors, there were very few people around him. Most simply walked past him, headed straight for the other instructors. However, that instructor seemed to pay this sight no heed. He simply smiled faintly as he looked on. Instructor, I would like to take your test. After an unknown period of time, an examinee suddenly walked down the mountain, up toward the instructor, and bowed respectfully. Hey, you should reconsider the matter. My test will be much harder than the other instructors. You would only have to face other examinees elsewhere, but here you'll have to battle with me. The instructor smiled lightly with his hands behind his back. Battle with an instructor. The slightly lean examinee was taken aback. At the other instructors, the examinees only had to cross blows with their peers. This was the first time he was hearing that one would need to fight with an instructor. How could an examinee be a match for an instructor? Wasn't this test impossible to pass? That's right. Not only do you have to face me, the slots I have is also much fewer than the others. If you waste time with me, you might miss out on your chance with the other instructors. Are you certain? The instructor said with smiling eyes. The lean examinee was taken aback. This was the first time he had seen such a thoughtful instructor who would turn away an examinee for the examinee's welfare. I am sorry. I'll try somewhere else. With a reddened face, the examinee lowered his head and uttered a few apologies before rushing off to somewhere else. The instructor didn't fly into a rage either. He simply watched the departing back of the examinee with a smile. Following which, a few other examinees also approached him and asked about the matter, but all of them were persuaded into retreating eventually. Occasionally, there were a few who wanted to try their luck, but they were sent flying right after the first blow. Who else would dare to approach him under such circumstances? In the end, a long time passed, but there wasn't a single successful examinee around the instructor. Young Master Chong, the person you're referring to is him? Around several dozen footsteps away, Zhao Jingdian glanced at the instructor and frowned. Wang Chong nodded his head seriously as he stared at the instructor fixedly. We have been standing here for so long, but I still cannot tell what he's trying to do. This examiner is too strong, and from the looks at it, he doesn't seem to be in a hurry to accept any students at all. Zhao Jingdian said. The more he looked at this instructor, the more suspicious he found the other party. All of the instructors within Kunwu training camp, with the exception of this middle-aged man, had a few successful examinees around them, and yet this instructor didn't seem to be anxious at all. Of course he's in no hurry. The one who should be anxious is us. Once we pass this mountain, we will miss the temple. The greatest resource that Kunwu training camp has to offer is him. Wang Chong said. Ah! Zhao Jingdian was taken aback. Wang Chong's words were very fresh and he had trouble understanding it. In any case, you just have to know that the benefits you'll derive from coming under this instructor is much greater than the others. Wang Chong said. Oh! Zhao Jingdian nodded. These words were much easier to understand. Wang Chong didn't continue speaking. Initially, Wang Chong was worried that he might have already finished his recruitment and left. But after seeing the situation with his own eyes, Wang Chong realized that he was worrying over nothing. The difficulty in being accepted by this unique instructor who imparted the art of commanding was far greater than any other instructors. It was clear that there was a problem, especially since the person himself was advising the other examinees to not take his test. Based on what Wang Chong deduced based on the information he gathered from his previous life, this instructor probably had far less slots than the others. While other instructors were accepting 20 to 30 recruits each, this instructor was probably only recruiting 4 to 5. However, seeing how relaxed this instructor was, Wang Chong realized that he might be mistaken. Perhaps the concept of slots didn't apply to this instructor at all. He might just be trying his luck here. If he failed to see anyone who meets his standards, he could simply walk away. In the end, I still have to try him out myself. Wang Chong's eyebrows leaped in frustration. In truth, he had been watching from afar in hopes of uncovering the other party's strength through the other examinees. However, Wang Chong realized that his action was futile. That instructor was simply too strong. The examinees who came at him didn't even manage to get him off the rock he was sitting on. With just a palm, the battle would end. Overwhelming strength that was precise, accurate, and deadly. Wang Chong realized that even if he were to continue watching on, he would be unable to uncover anything at all. Jingdian watched by the side. I'll go and give it a try. Wang Chong rolled up his sleeves. Young Master Chong, let me go first. I'll try him out for you. Zhao Jingdian said. There's no need for that, I'll go first. If you fail, I'm afraid that you might not get a second chance. Wang Chong replied calmly. In truth, Wang Chong didn't know much about this instructor. After all, not all news within the Kunwu training camp would reach the outside world. On top of that, the future had already changed. There wasn't a single successful recruit beside the legendary instructor at all. This was completely different from what Wang Chong remembered. Based on what he knew, all examinees should be granted multiple attempts. However, if the instructor were to decide on a whim that each examinee would only be given one try each, that might turn out to be problematic. This could mean that Zhao Jingdian would have lost his chance after trying the instructor out. In terms of experience, skills, and discernment, the current Zhao Jingdian was far beneath him. If he wasn't a match, Zhao Jingdian would stand even less of a chance. This was the reason why Wang Chong insisted on going first. I wonder if that person would appear. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind. There was another person whose name was bound to this instructor in his previous life. However, as the happenings in the two timelines had already deviated from one another, Wang Chong couldn't guarantee whether that person would appear here or not. While contemplating over these matters in his mind, it didn't take long for Wang Chong to reach the instructor. My greetings to instructor. Wang Chong bowed deeply. After watching from above for so long, you're finally willing to come down? The instructor spared Wang Chong an additional glance as compared to the others. Hearing those words, Wang Chong chuckled. This instructor seemed to be much more interesting than he had thought. I've no choice but to come down. If this goes on, I'll probably make no progress even after the sun has set. Wang Chong smiled. He wasn't surprised that this person had already long noticed him. Then are you confident now? That instructor asked once more. No, Wang Chong shook his head honestly. But you still came? That instructor assessed Wang Chong curiously. Hee, I've at least give a try before I know whether I can make it or not. However, I would like to ask a question. How many tries do I get? Interesting. I've been sitting here for so long, but you're the first one to ask me this question. Since the result is the same, entering Kunwu training camp, why don't you just choose an easier instructor? I'm sure that you can tell that I won't be an easy opponent. The instructor became more and more interested in the examinee before him. This youth felt very much different from others. Some of the examinees listened to his advice and backed down, while some of them tried out his strength for themselves. But in the end, all of them still chose to retreat after realizing the immense difficulty of his test. However, even though this lad had watched him from afar for so long, the other party should know that his walls were high. He still seemed to be adamant to take down his slot. The heaven rewards the diligent. With difficulty comes great rewards. I don't believe that there is no reason behind why the differing strength, standards, and difficulty of the instructors. Wang Chong replied earnestly. Ha ha ha, interesting. You're truly interesting. The instructor burst into laughter. He assessed Wang Chong with a peculiar glint in his eyes. I would never tell any other examinees about this, but just on how interesting you are, I'll make an exception. With me, you have 3 tries. As long as you can defeat me or withstand 3 of my moves, I'll take you in. 3 tries? Will it still count if I were to evade your attacks? Wang Chong asked in interest. Those count too, the instructor replied firmly with smiling eyes. Oh! Hearing the candid reply, Wang Chong didn't get excited. On the contrary, he became warier. Sometimes, the easier something appeared to be, the greater likelihood that it would be difficult. Given how candidly the other party replied to his query, it could only mean 2 things. Firstly, the other party possessed absolute confidence in his strength. Secondly, the other party's agility was top-notch, and he didn't think that anyone could dodge his attacks. This wasn't good news for Wang Chong. Even so, Wang Chong had no intentions of backing out. Rather, his fighting will was piqued. Instructor, I would like to give it a try, Wang Chong suddenly said. Feel free. However, don't blame me for not reminding you. It has already been quite a while since Kunwu training camp's examination started, and the more time you waste with me, the less likely you are to clear the tests with the other instructors. Once their slots are full, no matter how powerful you are, you will only end up being eliminated. The instructor said, I understand. Since you insist on it, let's start then. The instructor smiled as he did an invitation gesture. Confidence shone through his expression and movements. Clang! Wang Chong didn't stand on ceremonies, and he immediately drew his sword. A crisp metallic sound attracted the attention of all of the examinees in the area. Wang Chong stared at the instructor before him with a grim expression. He would never underestimate his opponent, less to say, a legendary instructor. Hands, shoulders, crotch, knees, legs. Wang Chong's eyes swiftly scanned through the other party's body parts. Even though the instructor had hidden his strength well, Wang Chong's hour-long observation wasn't completely futile. As an ex-Grand Marshal of the Central Plains, Wang Chong retained his experience and discernment capability. By noticing the slightest details, he could deduce many things. His palms have a thick layer of callus, so he must be skilled in palm techniques. Often, such people will lack talent in swordsmanship. Also, even though he rarely strikes, when he does, the veins on his left shoulder would constrict, his right knee would tremble, and his left toe would subconsciously point outward. This is a habit cultivated over time. Even though I've no idea what secret art he cultivates, there aren't too many techniques that would result in simultaneous movement in these regions. Wang Chong played back the few times that the instructor made a move. If the instructor were to know what was going through Wang Chong's mind, he would definitely be astonished. The ability to determine the larger picture from small details was a skill way beyond Wang Chong's age. Perhaps, even old generals who had faced countless enemies in the battlefield would be incapable of such a feat. This ability of Wang Chong was simply too astounding. Clang! The sword buzzed. Wang Chong opened his eyes and moved. Before the crowd could react, He had already disappeared from everyone's view. Once we pass this mountain, we will miss the temple. Simply means that the opportunity only comes once. Single character consecutive slash. Melding together with his sword to form one entity, Wang Chong charged forward. He perfectly displayed the notion of silent as though a docile lamb, agile as though a fleeing hare. With just this move, he was already superior to more than 90% of the examinees here. Even though Wang Chong had disappeared, most of the eyes of the examinees were still fixated to Wang Chong's original spot due to the ringing of the sword. Hee, interesting. The instructor smiled lightly on top of the rock. Even though Wang Chong's single-character consecutive slash was extraordinarily swift, taking many by surprise, it was still insufficient to fool his eyes. Wang. The instructor raised his right hand, and at the very moment that Wang Chong's sword was just about to reach him, he sent a palm straight toward him. This palm strike was no different from that which he used to deal with the other examinees. Simple but swift like a bolt of lightning and heavy as though a mountain. Felt like nothing in the world could withstand it. But in the very next moment, something unexpected occurred. Pong! Without any signs, just as Wang Chong was just a few steps away from the instructor, a sword flashed past, and in that short instant of blindness, Wang Chong disappeared once more. And almost instantaneously, clang! The crisp sound of a sword's call echoed, and a sword came horizontally from the side behind the instructor. The sword was close to the ground, aiming for the lower body of the instructor. By that moment, the sword was only several CUN away from the instructor's right leg. The abrupt change caused even the instructor's composed face to warp in astonishment. To be able to change his movement so abruptly despite the exceedingly swift movement, Wang Chong's skills were clearly far above all of the previous examinees. Pong! With a slight flick of his arm, his sleeve struck Wang Chong's sword. Surprisingly, the clash between the soft sleeve and hard sword resulted in a metallic reverberation, as if the sleeve was made of steel. At the same time, reminiscent of an eagle's talon, a callus-filled palm darted forward. Complemented with a movement technique, what the hand grabbed for wasn't Wang Chong's sword but the hand holding the sword, which was beyond his range from the rock. In the long period of time since the examination started, this was the first time he was forced to step away from the rock. Wang Chong's attack was aimed for his feet. If he didn't want to be crippled, he could only step away from the rock. Clang! Wang Chong's body moved alongside the sword, executing the celestial steps. His sword swam around as though a nimble snake, treading around the instructor's sleeves and slashing upward right at the instructor. Pong! A grim expression finally appeared on the instructor's face. With another jolt of his arm, his sleeve struck out with immense force, knocking Wang Chong into the sky. Ah! Shocked exclaims sounded in the area. Everyone knew that it was nearly impossible to move with agility in the sky. In the end, the gap between instructors and examinees was simply too great. With just raw strength, an instructor could easily subdue a student. Just the fact that Wang Chong was knocked into the sky had sealed his defeat. Young master, Zhao Jingdian, who was looking at the sight from afar, couldn't help but feel nervous. The situation was overwhelmingly against Wang Chong's odds. But something astonishing happened. Just as Wang Chong's body was knocked into the air, his body defied the law of the world and, of all impossibility, descended vertically downward. Making use of the momentum of the descent, a sword as swift as lightning slashed downward with immense force toward the hands of the instructor. Ha ha ha! Great! No wonder you insist on clearing my test. Your cultivation has already reached Origin Energy Tier 7. The instructor burst into laughter. The fact that Wang Chong could make use of his strength against him under such abrupt circumstance left him delighted. In the entire day, he was the first examinee who could cross blows with him like that. Pong! Facing Wang Chong's incomparably sharp sword, the instructor's aura gushed out. His robe fluttered along with the wind, and astonishingly, he didn't choose to retract his fingers before the trajectory of the blade. Instead, he maneuvered his fingers to avoid the sharp edge, and with his 10 fingers, he struck ceaselessly on the body of the sword. His fingers struck heavily on the sword. Even though each blow seemed light on the surface, it carried the weight of a mountain. And no matter what Wang Chong did, be it a slash or a cut, he was unable to chop off the other party's fingers. Needless to say, strike the other party's body. It was almost magical for one's fingers to be dexterous to this extent. Inconceivable, a spectating examinee from afar muttered, dumbfounded by the sight before him. He was only passing through here to look for another instructor to try his luck. He didn't expect to see such a sight here. The instructor's fingers were as though a fortress. No matter how swift Wang Chong's swordsmanship was, no matter how he moved, he was unable to overcome the wall created by the fingers of the instructor. This was the first time he was seeing such a peculiar battle technique. There were also many examinees around him who were equally shocked by the sight before them. In this instant, they suddenly had a feeling that the unkempt but amiable middle-aged man who had been standing on the rock for the entire day was probably the most formidable person of all of the instructors who appeared in Kunwu training camp today. How can a student fight with an instructor like that? What is that swordsmanship? To be able to turn the opponent's strength against him and follow the opponent relentlessly, making it impossible for the opponent to shake off the sword. Incredible. Amidst the shock, many people turned their eyes onto Wang Chong. On this mountain, most of the recruitment tests involved fights against other students, and the strongest ones would be given priority for recruitment. But this youth was challenging the instructor straight, and on top of that, he seemed to be crossing blows with the instructor on equal footing. Wang Chong's positioning changed swiftly. For an instant, he was in front. In the next, he was behind. For a moment, he would be on the left, and the next, he would be on the right. Most of the strength from the strikes of the 10 fingers of the instructor seemed to have been neutralized by his movements. To most here, this was an unimaginable feat. To think that Gongzi would have achieved such incredible mastery in his martial arts. Zhao Jingdian's heart beat wildly. This was his first time seeing Wang Chong execute single-character consecutive slash. That ceaseless barrage of attack was reminiscent of the endless waves of the ocean. Anyone who witnessed this swordsmanship would surely be left with a deep impression of it. However, it'll difficult for Gongzi to win with just this. Zhao Jingdian frowned. Inheriting his clan's deep knowledge in the field of martial arts, he swiftly discerned that even though Wang Chong seemed to be doing well on the surface, his slashes were slightly shaky, as though he couldn't control them well. On top of that, his pulse was also gradually becoming erratic. Clearly, Wang Chong was under great pressure from facing the instructor. Go! Suddenly, a deafening voice sounded. The instructor bellowed and his aura surged. A torrent of origin energy burst forth from his body as though a massive tsunami. In the air, Wang Chong was washed away by that burst of origin energy. Unable to redirect that massive force, his body shuddered and he was sent flying. Wang! Even so, Wang Chong reacted swiftly. While he was being knocked a dozen zhang away in the air, he swiftly executed the Origin Energy Tier 7's 1000 gene descension and forcefully pulled himself to the ground. Even so, he still staggered several steps backward before he was able to maintain his balance. Lad, your fighting prowess isn't bad. Having been in the capital for dozens of years, I have seen all kinds of martial arts, but I've never seen your swordsmanship before. Did you create it yourself? The instructor stepped forward and glanced downward at Wang Chong, who was a dozen zhang away, with gleaming eyes. His long hair fluttered along with the wind. That's right. Grabbing onto his chest with his left hand, Wang Chong chuckled. The instructor was truly formidable. His single-character consecutive slash could take down even the foreign invaders in his previous life easily, but yet it was still insufficient to deal with this instructor. In that clash, not only was Wang Chong unable to break the other party's defense, his pulse was even jolted to an erratic state. A significant amount of his stamina had been sapped as well. Interesting. Upon hearing Wang Chong's reply, the instructor's eyes glowed even brighter. To be able to create such a formidable sword technique at his age, that lad was an incredible genius. Your talent is indeed astonishing. If possible, I would really want to take you in as my disciple. However, given your current strength, it'll impossible for you to pass my test. In the end, rules are rules, even I can't break them. If you can't defeat me, you won't be able to pass the test. The first test is over. Do you still wish to continue on? Of course. Why shouldn't I continue on? Upon hearing those words, Wang Chong chuckled confidently. It didn't seem as though he was affected by his loss at all. Oh, the instructor's eyebrows shot up in intrigue. Don't blame me for not warning you then. Just now, you were the one on the offense. I haven't even started attacking it. Besides, I haven't used my full strength yet. I know. Wang Chong smiled. It wasn't out of a whim that he chose to wield his sword. Under the frighteningly sharp wood steel sword, the other party would have no choice but to hold back his movement. In this way, he could compensate for the massive gap between the two of them. More importantly, in the previous clash, even though Wang Chong had ended in defeat, he had also obtained what he wanted. 10 directional lightning fingers. 8 directional deflection might. Wang Chong thought. If he wasn't mistaken, the finger technique that the instructor executed was 10 directional lightning fingers, whereas the palm technique was 8 directional deflection might. These two were extremely profound martial arts, and they were the top-notch ultimate techniques of the military. These techniques were open to the generals to cultivate, but very few of those who attempted managed to successfully cultivate them. The 10 directional lightning fingers wasn't just a finger technique. More than that, it was a method to channel one's inner might. The purpose of this martial art wasn't to train one's finger, but the inner might throughout one's body. The finger technique was just a physical manifestation of one's inner might when one reaches a certain mastery in the technique. The 10 directional lightning fingers was suited for both offense and defense, and once one mastered the technique, one's fingers would become as resilient as steel. On the battlefield, even when barehanded, one could easily stab through an opponent's steel plate and tear them apart. The 10 fingers would become equivalent to 10 sharp and indestructible swords, allowing one to stab through metal and shatter rocks. Furthermore, with inner might augmenting one's movements, one's fingers would be able to move with astonishing dexterity. Thus, those who successfully cultivated this technique need not fear others dodging their offense. On the battlefield, those who successfully cultivated this ultimate art were no different from indestructible human-shaped killing machines. As for the 8 directional deflection might, it was the simple palm strike that the instructor executed previously. Even though it looked light, it possessed unimaginable force. Those who mastered these two ultimate arts would become a feared demon on the battlefield to the enemies, and the most valiant and reliable general to the allies. Where one went would be where blood would flow. Even though the instructor had tried his best to hide it, Wang Chong still managed to recognize the two techniques. This person isn't simple at all. Thinking so, Wang Chong raised his sword once more. Wang Chong had a far greater understanding of the ultimate techniques in the military as compared to the others. Since he knew that the technique the other party was executing was the 10 directional lightning fingers, the rest would be simple. Boom! Wang Chong's feet swept below, causing a cloud of dust to rise up and conceal his own figure. This move was abrupt, and it caused the instructor to frown in astonishment. Pong! In the next moment, a gleam of light flashed and a figure wielding a sword dashed forward. This again. The instructor chuckled lightly. Instead of dodging, he allowed Wang Chong to come straight toward him. But the situation was a little different this time. Instead of maneuvering to the instructor's back, he attacked right from the front. Hong! 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 The sword and finger clashed, producing deafening reverberations. Wang Chong's sword chi couldn't break the instructor's 10 directional lightning fingers at all. But this time, his movements were considerably different from before. Center, up, down, left, right, lower sweep. Wang Chong's offense seemed to follow some kind of rule. Clang! The metallic call of a sword echoed, and Wang Chong's sword technique abruptly changed. Gathering all of his strength, he slashed at the instructor's back waist. Ha-ha! It's useless. The instructor chuckled lightly. He turned around, and while one hand worked to keep Wang Chong's sword at bay, the other stretched forward to grab his wrist. The disparity in their strength was simply too great. Wang Chong's offense didn't pose a threat at all. Wang! Just as the instructor was about to lock Wang Chong's movements, an abrupt change occurred. Without any apparent reason, the instructor's fingers suddenly slowed. It was a completely impossible situation, but his movement speed abruptly slowed by innumerable folds, as though he had run low of origin energy. This slight change caused the instructor's face to darken. On the other hand, Wang Chong seemed to have known this would happen. Qi. Making use of this opportunity, he raised his sword and it swept through a radius of 3 qi in front of him. Hong Long. An immense might suddenly burst from the instructor's body, knocking Wang Chong along with his sword away. The cloud of dust slowly settled and tranquility was restored to the mountain. A small piece of cloth fell from the instructor's waist. Lad, how did you do it? That instructor stared at Wang Chong with an incomparably awful expression. He had always been a composed and casual person, but when Wang Chong managed to cut off a piece of cloth from his waist, he couldn't maintain his calm any longer. Intuition. Wang Chong chuckled as he uttered out a single word. He knew what the other party was trying to say. In truth, the 10-directional lightning fingers had its flaws as well. Or rather, to be more exact, the nature of this ultimate art made it extremely difficult to cultivate. One had to open up a net-like meridian connections throughout one's body to operate this technique, and before one fully masters this technique, this ultimate art would have a fatal flaw. From the first collision, Wang Chong had already deduced that the instructor hadn't fully mastered the 10-directional lightning fingers yet. He hadn't cultivated the meridians at the right of his back waist yet, and so, the meridians weren't knocked open yet. Usually, such a flaw wouldn't pose as much of a problem. However, if one were to use a special method and guide the origin energy in his body along a specific meridian toward the right of his back waist, it could cause a jam in his flow of origin energy. The other party would face a sudden deficiency in his origin energy, and this could prove to be a fatal flaw in the midst of a battle. However, this matter was way too astounding and inconceivable, so Wang Chong wasn't willing to reveal it. Intuition. The instructor fell into deep thoughts, but he slowly loosened his tightly knitted eyebrows, as though accepting his explanation. In the path of martial arts, there were indeed some exceptionally talented individuals who possessed intuition far beyond others. They could instinctively sense flaws in the movements of their opponents. If Wang Chong possessed such talent as well, that would explain the previous situation. To be able to cut off a part of my robe through intuition, you're indeed impressive. You pass. Thank you, instructor. Delighted, Wang Chong hurriedly bowed. Wait by the side first. When the time comes, I'll show you around Kunwu training camp. I won't be bringing you all about too often, so you have to familiarize yourself with the surroundings. The instructor said. Wang Chong nodded and backed down. The tenseness finally felt his body, and he felt visibly more relaxed. With this, Wang Chong's main aim at the Kunwu training camp had been accomplished. Gongzi, that person is too strong. I'm afraid that I might not be able to pass the test. When Wang Chong finally returned, Zhao Jingdian remarked with a frown. He had been watching the scene from here, and even Wang Chong had struggled with the test. He would be even less likely to pass. You don't need to worry. After a moment of contemplation, Wang Chong chuckled. Different people have different ways to passing the test. Although you won't be able to imitate my method, it's not like there aren't other ways to go about doing it. Besides, have you realized it yet? From the start to the end, that person has been suppressing his strength and his cultivation has never exceeded that of origin energy realm. This, Zhao Jingdian fell into deep thoughts. That person is at least a true martial realm expert, and if he were to use his full strength, do you think that will stand a chance? The 3 chances he spoke of is actually an opportunity he's giving us. Otherwise, if he doesn't intend to pass anyone at all, he need not go through so much trouble. Wang Chong said. I understand. Zhao Jingdian nodded his head. The test was extremely difficult but definitely not impossible. All it demanded was additional effort and wits. Listen to me? Wang Chong pulled Zhao Jingdian to the side and whispered into his ears. Then, patting his shoulders, he said, I can only tell you so much. The rest is up to you. The test wasn't easy, and the current Zhao Jingdian wasn't the same as the one Wang Chong remembered from his previous life. The one before him was still inexperienced, but Wang Chong believed that some things would still remain the same. His words might not mean much to other people, but he believed that Zhao Jingdian would understand the significance of it. Gongzi, I understand. Zhao Jingdian nodded. Then, walking down the mountain, Zhao Jingdian didn't rush into taking the test. Instead, he stood at the distance away from the area, cupped his chin, and studied the surroundings contemplatively. Instructor, I am Zhao Jingdian. I would like to give your test a try. A while later, Zhao Jingdian finally walked over and bowed deeply. Hee. Feel free to show me your moves. The instructor beckoned casually. Even though Zhao Jingdian was a reticent person who spoke few words and looked a little slow on the uptake, he wasn't weak at all. Similar to Wang Chong, he was an Origin Energy Tier 7 expert as well. Of the offsprings of Duke Zhou's subordinates, among the younger generation, the only one who could surpass him was probably only Yi Yinping. It was precisely because Zhao Jingdian's cultivation was remarkable that Wang Chong persuaded him to give it a try. Boom! A cloud of dust flew up. Zhao Jingdian's fighting method differed from Wang Chong's. His blows were frontal and forceful, but at the same time, they weren't lacking liveliness or adaptability either. From this, it could be seen that Zhao Jingdian's talent was top-notch. At the very least, he wasn't too far off from Wang Chong. Boom! 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 The two figures crossed blows swiftly, and after several breaths, a figure flew out as though a kite whose string was snapped. Zhao Jingdian, do you still wish to continue on? The instructor smiled. With a hand behind his back, he gestured majestically with the other. His movement carried the disposition of an unworldly expert. Again, wiping away the slight trail of blood at the edge of his mouth, Zhao Jingdian charged forward once more. His fighting method was clearly much different from a moment ago. It seemed to wield less force, but it gained a greater degree of flexibility and agility in return. However, he still couldn't avoid the ultimate fate of being knocked back. Boom! When Zhao Jingdian was sent flying again, Wang Chong, who was watching the proceedings by the side, finally frowned. There were only 3 tries for the examination, and Zhao Jingdian had already failed twice. If he were to fail once more, he wouldn't have any more chances left. Could my actions have harmed him instead? Wang Chong thought. He could feel that the strength the instructor was displaying was slightly greater than before. He was clearly biased against Zhao Jingdian. The duo had been watching him for a very long time, and the instructor had already noticed it from the start. Perhaps it was due to Wang Chong's influence, but the other party was clearly resolute to not allow Zhao Jingdian to pass. Zhao Jingdian, horse trampling the barracks! Wang Chong suddenly shouted. Wang! Hearing Wang Chong's words, Zhao Jingdian's body jolted. He swiftly turned around to look at Wang Chong in shock, as though Wang Chong had spoken something incredible. What's that? The instructor frowned. He glanced at Wang Chong in astonishment when boom! A light flashed and a fearsome might rippled in the air. Origin energy surged through Zhao Jingdian's body, and as though a ferocious tiger, he pounced over. The same move and the same fighting method, but yet, the instructor seemed to feel that something was very different amidst the familiarity. Boom! Just as Zhao Jingdian seemed like he was about to be defeated once more, an abrupt change occurred. His body swayed and his aura surged, granting him a sudden burst of speed. In that instant, he split into 2, then into 3, leaving behind 2 after images on the spot. Boom! He avoided the instructor's fist technique and dived straight toward him. Boom! A powerful fist flew out and struck Zhao Jingdian's chest, preventing him from coming any closer. But at the same time, 2 feet struck the instructor on his chest. Hong Long! Zhao Jingdian was knocked onto the ground and he spewed a mouthful of blood. His face was pale. On the other hand, the instructor maintained the posture of his final attack. Glancing at the 2 footprints on his chest, a bizarre expression crept onto his face. You've won. After a long time, the instructor finally said. Even though Zhao Jingdian's kick hadn't hurt him at all, it had barely tickled him, he was still defeated. He didn't expect Zhao Jingdian to break through his defense using such a bizarre double-edged move. Even though it could be considered as cheating, it was a fact that the other party had managed to leave behind 2 footprints on his body. Going by the rules, he had indeed lost. This is the method that you've taught him? The instructor glanced at Wang Chong helplessly. Yes. Wang Chong's didn't deny the matter. He walked over to Zhao Jingdian and passed him a pill which he obtained from Six-Fingered Zhang. Here, eat this pill. Explaining the usage of some words. Usually, when I use call of the sword, call refers to more of a natural sound produced by the sword. For example, the crisp metallic ringing sound when you draw a sword, when you slash the sword through air, etc. Let's go. I'll help you to the side. Wang Chong supported Zhao Jingdian over to the side. After he consumed the pill and rested for a moment, Zhao Jingdian's complexion gradually recovered. Gongzi, how do you know that I'm cultivating horse trampling the barracks? After looking around and ensuring that there was no one within earshot, Zhao Jingdian finally asked Wang Chong the question that had been bugging in his mind. Horse trampling the barracks was an ultimate technique of the Zhao clan. It enhanced one's agility explosively for a short period of time, allowing one to create 3 after images to confuse and break through an opponent's defense. Usually, when on defense, one's attention would be focused on the enemy's upper body. However, the crux of the horse trampling the barracks actually lay in the feet. All it took was a momentary lapse in judgment for the instructor to fall for Zhao Jingdian's ploy and be kicked on his chest. However, even though this was a mystical move that was exceptionally useful in breaking through an enemy's defense when the other party was unprepared, it was extremely difficult to cultivate. Hence, there were very few Zhao clan members who had managed to successfully cultivate it. In truth, Zhao Jingdian had cultivated horse trampling the barracks on secret. Even his grandfather was unaware of it. As he hadn't completed his cultivation of the technique yet, he didn't even consider using it in a practical battle. In truth, the mouthful of blood he spewed previously was mostly due to a backlash from his inner energy. My grandfather had once told me about the Zhao clan's horse trampling the barracks and gauging from your origin energy tier 7 cultivation. I guess that you might have started cultivating this secret art. Wang Chong said. So it's Duke Zhou. Zhao Jingdian was stunned for a moment before coming to a realization. Any bizarre occurrence could be explained if Duke Zhou was involved. He might have been able to hide the fact that he was cultivating horse trampling the barracks from others, but he didn't think that he would be able to conceal it from Duke Zhou's sharp eyes. Seeing Zhao Jingdian's expression, Wang Chong couldn't help but chuckle internally. Was there even a need for him to ask grandfather on Zhao Jingdian's affairs? In his previous life, the two of them had fought alongside and conquered many battlefields together. He couldn't be any more familiar with the other party's martial arts. Whether Zhao Jingdian had cultivated horse trampling the barracks or not and how far he had progressed in it, Wang Chong could tell in a single glance. There's a reason why I insisted for you to come under him. Even though those who graduate from the training camp in the future would eventually reach great heights in the future, that instructor is different. While others have to spend several years toiling at the bottom layer, will be able to take on the role of a lieutenant straight and lead an army to a battlefield. By then, you'll know that this mouthful of blood was worth it. Zhao Jingdian exclaimed in astonishment as he abruptly raised his head. Wang Chong nodded silently. One who learned the art of commanding couldn't possibly walk on the same path as the others. Other graduates, including those from Shenwei and Longwei, usually started out from the smallest section commander. On the other hand, those who studied the art of commanding were given the position of a lieutenant as soon as they graduated. This was also one of the reasons why Wang Chong insisted on coming under this instructor. In his previous life, Wang Chong idled most of his time away. It was only after the catastrophe struck and he caught the sight of the elders that he rose in a single go to become the Grand Marshal of the Central Plains. But by then, it was already too late. He had already missed too many opportunities. As such, Wang Chong was determined not to allow the same to occur in this life. As such, he turned his eyes to that instructor. Lieutenant was a very good starting point. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least several years for even a talented foot soldier to rise to the position of a lieutenant. And to Wang Chong, he lacked nothing but time. If he could become a lieutenant from the moment of his graduation, he could save a lot of hassle. There's still a while longer before the examination ends. You should rest here first. I'll go out and take a walk, Wang Chong said before walking down the mountain. In Wang Chong's view, the current Kunwu training camp was a treasure trove in itself. There were too many future great generals lying in here. As long as he played his cards well, with the strengths of these future great generals, he might be able to change Great Tang's future altogether. The future Grand Marshal of the Central Plains and many rising great generals working hand in hand. This was a force that no one could disregard, could possibly change many things. Wang Chong soon disappeared amidst the crowd. At the same time, several figures appeared from the crowd. Let's go. We'll give it a try as well. In truth, Wang Chong and Zhao Jingdian weren't the only ones who had been spying on the instructor. Wang Chong had only been observing the situation for an hour, but there were a few who had already been observing for several hours now. It was impossible a student to defeat an instructor. As such, most people didn't harbor much hope for this. However, from the precedent with Wang Chong and Zhao Jingdian, they had learned quite a few things. Wang Chong was unaware of the changes at the top on the mountain. At this moment, his attention was completely absorbed into something else. Too many things had happened, resulting in the future path to be diverted. The current Kunwu training camp was very much different from how he recalled it to be. At the very least, back then, there weren't so many Saiyans here. Due to Wang Chong's influence, many things had changed. However, one thing to rejoice over was that the number of recruits Kunwu training camp accepted had also increased as well. This meant that his impact on those future great generals who came from humble backgrounds was minimal. The great generals who should appear here should still appear here. This was something Wang Chong was extremely relieved about. A huge crowd walked to and fro the massive mountain. Most of them were wandering around worriedly as they attempted to find an instructor whom they could clear the test with. Different from them, Wang Chong's attention was on the crowd instead. His gaze swept across the innumerable faces passing him by. Suddenly, a figure who kept turning around aimlessly caught Wang Chong's notice. That person had a large bow hanging on his back, and he was loitering around the Imperial Army guards, seemingly at a loss. It's him. Wang Chong suddenly chuckled. Seeing the symbolic large bow, a memory gradually surfaced in Wang Chong's head. Legend has it that in the first batch of recruits of Kunwu training camp, there was a first-timer who, due to coming from a rural location and was visiting the capital for the first time, was unable to differentiate between the Imperial Army guards and instructors. As such, he spent a lot of his time walking to and fro the Imperial Army guards, pleading with them to give him a chance for the test. The Imperial Army guards had told him repeatedly that they weren't instructors and the instructors were further up the mountain. But that person advanced forward only to look for the other Imperial Army guards stationed higher up the mountain. This matter became a huge laughingstock in the Kunwu training camp, and there were many jokes born from that. Even so, that person's strength was no joke at all, and the massive bow he carried behind him proved testimony to that. Rumor has it that this person was capable of accurately shooting an apple on a tree from several li away, and a base reinforced by the squad of archers that he led would become the sturdiest fortress on the battlefield. Seeing that person wandering about as though a confused fly, Wang Chong chuckled lightly and walked over. "Brother, may I know how to address you?" Only after walking closer did Wang Chong catch a closer glimpse at the other party's appearance. The other party was around 16 to 17-year-old, and he was dressed in beast skin. He was a perfect fit for the stereotype of a mountain hunter. To this, "I am Chun Burang. It's the northern governor who recommended me here." The youth hunter looked slightly restrained. "It's indeed him." Wang Chong was taken aback. There was no mistake about it, it must that person. After all, even the name was right. It was just that he didn't expect the other party to come from a family of hunters. It was no wonder why he didn't ask any of the other examinees for directions even though so many of them were walking by him. Most probably, he rarely interacted with others on normal occasions, thus making him slightly socially awkward. "Are you looking for the instructors?" Wang Chong asked. "Why, yes. However, I can't seem to find where the instructors are. Is the recruitment exercise over already?" Speaking till the end, Chun Burang nearly burst into tears. On the other hand, Wang Chong nearly burst out laughing. Since this person was able to pass the prior tests, he shouldn't have been so ignorant. It must really be his first time taking such a long journey away from home. "Hee, don't worry, the examination is far from over. Why don't I bring you to the instructors?" Wang Chong offered. "Ah, that would be great. Delighted, the youth gazed at Wang Chong in gratitude. This was the first time someone had walked forward and offered him help ever since he entered Kunwu training camp. Thus, Wang Chong brought him up to the mountain peak. The ones that you spoke to were all Imperial Army guards. The real instructors are all near the peak of the mountain. Even though their disposition feel the same, they are two completely different groups of people. On top of that, their dress-up is different as well. The armor that the instructors are dressed in is vastly different from the armor the Imperial Army guards are wearing. Ah! Chun Burang's look of realization piqued Wang Chong's laughter. Along the way, Chun Burang seemed to be interested in everything in the surroundings. It seemed like there really was a good reason for the jokes he created back then. Since you practice archery, I can introduce an instructor to you. That person also specializes in archery. Wang Chong said. All right. Chun Burang nodded without even thinking over it. Perhaps it was due to his innocence, but he seemed to hold complete trust in Wang Chong. After some interaction, Wang Chong also felt goodwill toward the other party. Chun Burang had just come from the mountain, and there was an aura of simplicity lingering around him. This kind of aura made instinctively bred intimacy. Right. How do I address you? Chun Burang suddenly realized that up until now, he still didn't know the other party's name, and he knocked his head. I am Wang Chong. Chun Burang abruptly came to a halt. He stared at Wang Chong with widened eyes. See, could it be that you are? Staring at Wang Chong in shock, Chun Burang stuttered. Even though he had come from a clan of hunters and he spent most of his time in the mountains, he still heard of Wang Chong's name. He didn't expect the person who rendered him assistance to be that Wang Chong. Smiling, Wang Chong nodded his head. It seemed like the benefits derived from the regional commander's incident was truly immense. This made it much easier for Wang Chong to unfold his plans. Kunwu training camp isn't very big. If you've any time, feel free to look for me. We can always have a chat or something. Wang Chong extended an invitation to Chun Burang. No problem, no problem. Chun Burang nodded his head in agitation just like a little chick. Regardless of whether it was his previous life or his current one, Wang Chong had never been good with bows. Thus, Wang Chong couldn't really guide Chun Burang on this aspect. Even so, he retained some memory of various archery techniques from his previous life. Perhaps this might prove useful in helping Chun Burang raise his capabilities. After separating with Chun Burang, Wang Chong loitered around the crowd a little longer before returning back to the mountain peak. However, to Wang Chong's surprise, he saw a few more figures standing near Zhao Jingdian. What happened? Wang Chong walked over and asked with a hushed voice. These people came not too long after you left. They are all very strong, and based on my estimates, their cultivation is at least at Origin Energy Tier 7. Like me, they all used the method of mutual destruction to pass the test. Zhao Jingdian said. He had been sitting here since Wang Chong left, so he witnessed the entire proceedings from start to end. Oh! Hearing Zhao Jingdian's recount, Wang Chong couldn't help but chuckle. There's nothing too surprising about that. There are many smart people here as well. Most probably, they were watching by some corner when we were taking the test, so it isn't too surprising for them to know about the method as well. The biggest mistake one could make was to underestimate others. Wang Chong could immediately tell that those people were imitating Zhao Jingdian's method. Furthermore, given how they resorted to it the moment they rushed up, not even bothering to test the waters first, it was clear that they were confident. If they hadn't witnessed Zhao Jingdian's fight, they wouldn't have dared to do something so risky. Those two are still all right. I can sense that their cultivation is around our level. However, that man, somehow, I feel that he's even stronger than you, Zhao Jingdian said fearfully. Oh! Wang Chong's eyebrows shot up and a grim expression appeared on his face. Zhao Jingdian had witnessed his fight with the instructor, and he wasn't the type of person to exaggerate. If Zhao Jingdian said that the other person was stronger than him, then it was very likely that that was the case. Who are you talking about? That person over there. Zhao Jingdian pointed to the person standing behind the instructor. Only then did Wang Chong realize that he had overlooked a figure. That person was standing around 10 zhang behind the instructor, so Wang Chong simply thought that he was just a spectating student. On top of that, the person had an extremely cold face, and the aura he emanated was equally frigid. Even when standing amidst a crowd, his presence would make him exceedingly conspicuous. He seemed to have a natural disposition in inducing fear and creating distance against others. There wasn't a single person within a perimeter of 3 zhang around him. The fact that the crowd was circling around him showed a lot. It's him. Wang Chong's eyebrows shot up in astonishment. That person is extremely formidable. If I'm not mistaken, his cultivation should be very close to Origin Energy Tier 9. On top of that, when he crossed hands with the instructor was actually unable to defend against him and was left with a small cut. Zhao Jingdian spoke with a slightly apprehensive tone. To be able to induce such apprehension within Zhao Jingdian, the other party's strength was indeed extraordinary. However, that wasn't what Wang Chong was concerned about. At this moment, his mind was currently preoccupied with something else. Wang Chong knew who that person was. He was Su Hanshan. Even among the future great generals in Kunwu training camp, this person was ranked amongst the top tier. He was one of the few from the 3 great training camps who was publicly acknowledged to be a talented general capable of standing his own ground on the battlefield. But right until the very end, he was only considered to be a potential great general. He didn't manage to become a grade 1 general like Wang Chongxi, Go Xianji, and Zhang Shogui. There was minimal news on Su Hanshan out in public, and all that was known about him was that he had come from Kunwu training camp. To think that he would be a student of this instructor as well, Wang Chong muttered under his breath. Looking at that figure 10 zhang away, a complicated expression appeared on Wang Chong's face. In Kunwu training camp, Su Hanshan was definitely ranked in the top. In the future, the army that he personally trained and led would possess the greatest defensive ability in a frontal fight across the entire Great Tang. No matter how many layers of defense the other party put up, the army that Su Hanshan led would be able to tear apart their formation as though a sharp blade, stabbing right into the core of the opposing army and tearing it apart from within. In a frontal clash on the battlefield, Su Hanshan's army was a subject of fear for hostile nations and foreign tribes. The troops that he trained fought right down to their very last breath. No matter how powerful the enemies were, no matter how disadvantageous the situation was, his army was able to stand upright without the slightest fluster. And Su Hanshan had always braved through death with his subordinates as well, thereby becoming their spiritual leader as well. In terms of belief, there wasn't a single army who was as resolute and tightly knitted as Su Hanshan's army. But it was a pity that there was no such thing as a perfect being. Su Hanshan possessed an aloof personality, and this resulted in his eventual defeat. Just as what that could be seen at this very instant, Su Hanshan was simply too cold and proud. His presence in itself made others instinctively distance themselves from him. In other words, he couldn't fit in. In the military, there wasn't anyone who was close to Su Hanshan. Even those who graduated from Kunwu training camp also didn't have much of a relationship with him. And on the battlefield, Su Hanshan never needed or expected reinforcement either. His proud personality made him unwilling to accept the help of others. However, there wasn't a single person who could rule the battlefield by himself. Wang Chong had failed back then. Su Hanshan was the same as well. His personality had already carved out his eventual fate. He disappeared along with his feared army on the battlefield of the Great Catastrophe. To think that I would meet him here, Wang Chong thought as his heart leaped in agitation. Destiny was truly something inconceivable. To think that 2 lone wolves would meet one another here. Wang Chong needed help, but due to the lack of help, he could only become a lone wolf of that catastrophic age. On the other hand, due to Su Hanshan's aloof personality, he was unwilling to accept help, so he became a lone wolf as well. Looking at this talented future great general who would die before maturity, Wang Chong suddenly understood what he had to do. All right. Seated on the rock, the instructor finally spoke, drawing everyone's attention. I'll be ending the test in advance. Initially, I only intended to accept 2 to 3 people, but I ended up taking in the 5 of you. That's more than sufficient already. Remember this, my name is Xianxia, and from today onward, I'll be your teacher. For now, since the test is officially over, follow me. I'll bring you all around to familiarize you all with the training camp. With the exception of Wang Chong, this was the first time everyone was hearing his name. So his surname is Zhao as well. Of the people gathered here, Zhao Jingdian was the most surprised to learn of Zhao Qianxiu's name. Don't think too much into it. Let's go. Wang Chong patted Zhao Jingdian's back. Before leaving, he shot a final glance backward. By now, the students on the mountain had already thinned down significantly. The recruitment was already nearing its end. Facing the bottom of the mountain, Wang Chong whistled. Soon, the neighing of a colt sounded and a cloud of dust flew into the air. Before long, an indigo figure could be seen charging over. In just a short moment, a colt of around Wang Chong's height with hoofs as white as snow appeared amidst swirls of dust. Its mane flew majestically with the wind as it excitedly licked Wang Chong's face. All right, little shadow, stop licking me. Its tongue felt ticklish, and Wang Chong couldn't help but chuckle as he stroked the white-hoofed shadow's indigo coat. It had only been a few days since it started following Wang Chong, but it had already grown very fond of him. I see you already have your own war steed. That is great. Groom it carefully and don't waste such a good-spirit steed. In the future, it'll become your second life. A deep voice sounded from behind. Turning around, Wang Chong saw 5 pairs of eyes staring at him with bizarre gazes. The one who had just spoken was instructor Zhao Qianxiu. None of the people here were fools. With just a single glance, it was clear that Wang Chong's steed was anything but ordinary. It was enviable that Wang Chong had such a steed when he had just entered the training camp. In any case, Zhao Qianxiu didn't speak too much about it. After saying those words, he turned around and advanced forward. From the examination area where the instructors were stationed to the peak of the mountain, there was a fence. Imperial army guards were stationed behind the fence to guard the area, and only those who had passed the instructors' tests were qualified to enter the barracks within the region. Flashing his token, Zhao Qianxiu was able to bring the group in without any problem. Soon they arrived at the barracks. Kunwu training camp can be further divided into 4 smaller camps: Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise, and they are located on the 4 peaks of the mountain. Based on the instructor one is under and one's level of cultivation, the recruits will be allocated to one of the camps. Of which, the allocation for Vermilion Bird is slightly more unique as it's where all the ladies live. The reason why I'm telling you this is to warn you all not to go peek at the ladies. Don't even dream about sneaking into the Vermilion Bird peak. I know that some of you will definitely try it in the future. Hearing those words, the group couldn't help but chuckle. This instructor sure is interesting, Wang Chong thought. If you were to peep on those ladies, you'll definitely be kicked out of the camp. However, that is not the reason why I'm warning you. The ladies of Vermilion Bird Base are exceptionally powerful. Even though your level of cultivation isn't bad either, you all might not necessarily be a match if you were to encounter them. For some reason, Zhao Qianxiu's words reminded Wang Chong and Zhao Jingdian of the little Martianess Weiliang. Zhao Qianxiu's words were definitely not an exaggeration. All right, I'll bring you all to the training grounds now. This is the location you'll be frequenting the most in the future. Saying so, Zhao Qianxiu brought the group further up the mountain peak. The 3 Great Training Camp is a major affair of the royal court, and the Sage Emperor is extremely concerned about it. One thing you must know about the 3 Great Training Camps is that they are built to augment the military. The royal court's intention behind contributing resources to train you is not for you to boast about your strength. Rather, it is to prepare you for the military so that you can contribute to the empire through your talents. Thus, there is some basic knowledge that you must know about Great Tang's military. Judging from your current cultivation realms, it's also about time for you to come into contact with this. Zhao Qianxiu said as the group stood by the side of the archery training ground encircled by a fence. The troops in the military can be divided into 3 main categories: archer, foot soldier, and cavalry. You'll have to choose among the 3 categories in the future. Of them, archers represent dexterity, Xianxia pointed to a student standing a significant distance away in the training ground. The student drew an arrow on a gigantic bow and abruptly released his grip. Xiao. In the blink of an eye, a dozen arrows were released in unimaginably short intervals. In just a short instant, that person managed to shoot 12 arrows individually. The 12 sharp arrows flew in differing trajectories and struck 12 different wooden dummies 50 meters away accurately. Xiao. Almost instantaneously, another recruit drew his arrow. This time, it was 14 sharp arrows striking the same puppet from many different directions. And all of the arrows accurately landed on the vitals of a human. Upon seeing this sight, everyone was stunned. That's dexterity. Martial artists who cultivate dexterity-type secret arts will possess attacking speed far beyond that of their peers. In fact, some of the outstanding ones are even able to move 10 times faster than dash. In other words, in a physical brawl, in the duration that you are able to deal your opponent a single punch, the other party might be able to deal you 2, 3, or even more. On the battlefield, the most suitable class for such a martial artist is archery. With a high attacking speed, one will be able to shoot a huge quantity of arrows to be fired within a short moment. Rumor has it that the most talented archer in the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganate is capable of simultaneously striking 50 sprinting hares on the exact same spot of their body from several li away. In other words, on a battlefield, he could destroy 50 of our elite foot soldiers in the blink of an eye. If there were 10 such people like him, can you imagine how many of our foot soldiers would die in just a short face-off? If the numbers increased further to 50 or even more, our vanguard would start to falling apart. However, even though the master archers in the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganate are incredibly talented, the strongest archers are still within Great Tang. Do you know why? At this point, Xianxia abruptly paused and flashed the group a mysterious smile. Bow, armor, and arrows, Zhao Jingdian muttered after contemplating for a moment. Smart. It's because our Great Tang has the world's best bows, sharpest arrows, and sturdiest armors, Xianxia complimented. On the other hand, Wang Chong's eyebrows knitted together inconspicuously. At that instant, he recalled the issue that Elder Yi, Duke of Hu, and the others raised. In the past few decades of trade between Great Tang and the rest of the world, the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganate had accumulated a massive pile of top-notch metal, arrows, and armors. Such a long period of time was sufficient for them to craft a huge quantity of armor and sharp arrows. Even though Wang Chong had already advised Elder Yi and the others regarding the usage of using tariffs to control the flow of metal, there was nothing they could do about those. The resources had already been transported out of Great Tang's borders. Everyone has just enlisted into the camp. Xianxia is probably intentionally leaving this issue out, so as to prevent fear and panic, Wang Chong thought. In truth, he couldn't tell whether this was good or bad. But the only ones who could deal with master archers are master archers themselves. Thus, the Empire has always valued the grooming of master archers. Xianxia continued. Strength, speed, and dexterity. Those are the three main classifications of martial arts. If dexterity grants one aptitude for archery, speed would correspond to cavalry then, Xianxia said as he walked toward another giant training ground. Several fully armored examinees could be seen taking turns riding two valiant black war steeds, and the wind whistled as they galloped to and fro the area. On the training ground, there were various obstacles such as wooden stakes and formations. These few people had to travel along the narrow spaces between the wooden stakes. But even so, their speed didn't fall by the least. Held in the hands of the riders were wooden swords which they jabbed the wooden stakes with relentlessly as they passed them by. Every single one of their stabs would accurately strike the vitals on the wooden stakes. Seems like there are many good buds in Kunwu training camp. Standing by the perimeter of the training ground, Xianxia saw an examinee stabbing accurately on every wooden stake from the same angle on the same location and complimented. There are two main advantages to a mount: greater mobility and enhanced strength from the momentum of a charge. Xianxia suddenly gestured to another instructor on the training ground, and the latter replied with a chuckle. Xianxia, I'll just say it first. This stone is mine, so you better carry one up to replace it by tonight. Cut the nonsense, are you doing it or not? Xianxia reprimanded jokingly. Clearly, the two of them were close to one another. Fine, on the account of your students, I'll give in to you this once. The latter gestured helplessly. Then, taking off his helmet, he slowly aimed his spear at a specific direction. The group turned in the direction at which the spear was aimed for, and at around 50 zhang away, a massive rock possessing the height of 2 men towered. Heavy! This must be Xuanwu rock. It probably weighs 4,000 to 5,000 jin. Wang Chong roughly estimated the weight of the boulder. He had already noticed it when they had just arrived earlier, but thinking that it was just an ornament, he didn't pay it any heed then. But from the looks of it now, it seemed to be a dummy for the training of the cavalry. Boom! Seated on the back of an armored steed, the instructor was dressed in a heavy black armor, and an aura of menace crept forth from him. At this instant, he felt like a demon who had just crawled out from hell. The war steed neighed and charged forward, leaving behind innumerable after images behind them. Boom! Before the crowd could process what was going on, a deafening explosion sounded in the distance. The ground shook violently, and the 4,000 jin Xuanwu rock abruptly burst apart, blasting thousands of fragments into the air. At that very instant, everyone was stunned. A huge wind blustered from the impact, and even at several dozen zhang away, the group could feel a dull pain on their faces. Nay! The war steed cried valiantly. Under a mysterious veil of dust and rock fragments, the silhouette of a man and his steed gradually reappeared. At this instant, he resembled a war god who had descended from the heavens. Xianxia, I'll be expecting you to replace this. Remember to move a Xuanwu rock over by tonight, the instructor said as he leaped off the horse, flipped across the fences, and disappeared toward the bottom of the mountain. Did you see that? That's the might of a charging cavalry. With a war steed, an Origin Energy Tier 5 martial artist can easily achieve an assault equivalent to the full might of an Origin Energy Tier 8 martial artist, and that is just a conservative estimate. A group of true martial Tier 5 steel cavalry can easily subdue a true martial Tier 7 foot soldier army. That's the strength of the cavalry. Regardless of which nation it is, be it the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganate, the Goguryeo Empire, the Yusang Empire, or Irai's Mengshi Zhao, even when going as far west as the Karak Spazinu and the Abbasid Caliphate, every single one of them prioritized the grooming of a large and powerful army of steel cavalry. The might of a single cavalry might be negligible on the battlefield, but when they came in an army, they would be the nightmare of any nation. They'll also be the greatest threat you all will face in the future battlefields. A frontal charge by a huge army of steel cavalry can easily tear apart any formation. Just like with archers, the only ones who could deal with cavalry face-on are other cavalry. As such, Great Tang also places stress on the grooming of cavalry as well, Xianxia said. Hearing those words, Wang Chong frowned inconspicuously, but eventually, he decided against saying anything. Admittedly, the might of an army of charging cavalry was fearsome, but to Wang Chong, they couldn't even come close to be considered as unstoppable. The current empire was still stuck with the notion that only cavalry could deal with cavalry. However, in that era when he was the Grand Marshal of the Central Plains, the charge of an army of cavalry definitely wasn't a difficult problem to solve at all. At the very least, the ones who could deal with cavalry were far more than just cavalry themselves. Last but not least, the foot soldiers. Just as you all can see here, foot soldiers are the most numerous troop we have in Great Tang. Oblivious to Wang Chong's thoughts, Xianxia advanced forward, and soon, they arrived at their last destination. Tracing the Xianxia's gaze, amidst a massive training ground, the group could see a large number of recruits brawling with one another. Of the 3 main training grounds, the Archer Training Ground, Cavalry Training Ground, and Foot Soldier Training Ground, the Foot Soldier Training Ground had the most number of recruits. In here, everyone wielded different kind of weapons and utilized innumerable types and styles of martial arts. In comparison to the archer's shots and cavalry's charges, the training here was much more lively and diverse. The core of foot soldiers is strength. Even if you are lacking mastery in riding and archery, as long as you possess sufficient strength, you will be a powerful foot soldier. Of the 3 main troops, the requirements for foot soldiers have always been the lowest, and the death toll has always been the highest as well. However, things have changed in the current Great Tang dynasty. From the Han to the Sui, the foot soldiers of our Great Tang can be said to be the strongest in history. Even though our cavalry is inferior to Yusang, and our archery is unable to match up to Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganate, our foot soldiers are the strongest of them all. You all have to remember that the troops of our Great Tang never operates individually. When our archers are suppressing the other archers and our cavalry are curbing the other cavalry, all that is left is for our foot soldiers to conquer. Hearing those words, loud cheering sounded in the area. Even the other recruits who were passing by couldn't help but smile at those words. Indeed, of the entire world, Great Tang's foot soldiers definitely ranked at the top. When a legion of foot soldiers were allowed to come into close quarters, regardless of whether they were facing archers or cavalry, with just their overwhelming number in itself, they would be able to subdue just about any enemy easily. Thus, even though foot soldiers couldn't match up to soldiers and cavalry, Great Tang still chose to maintain a huge army of foot soldiers. Of the entire world, Great Tang was the only one who could utilize foot soldiers to such a level. Before Origin Energy Tier 6, one mainly trains their tendons, bones, skin, blood, flesh, and internal organs. At Origin Energy Tier 6, one will be able to choose among Strength type, Speed type, and Dexterity type cultivation techniques to cultivate. This choice will determine one's future role on the battlefield. There are all kinds of cultivation techniques in the training camp, and you are free to learn them. Of the 3 types, I would recommend you to pick any 2 to learn. However, I don't advise you all to take on all 3 of them at once. Being too overambitious will just make you a master of none. Even though there are people who take on 3 types of cultivation techniques at once, for most people it'll only mean slower progression. Alright, follow me. We'll be heading to the cultivation ground next. Xianxia beckoned as he led the group beyond the vast training grounds. Behind the training grounds was the cultivation ground. So the place that we saw from the bottom of the mountain was this. Zhao Jingdian remarked. Wang Chong nodded. Lifting his gaze, he looked at the massive flag that stood at nearly 100 zhang tall. The word on it, Kunwu, was exceptionally striking. Beneath this gigantic flag was the cultivation ground. Massive palace-like buildings filled the area, and they were all cultivation chambers. Follow me. Under Zhao Qianxiu's lead, the group stepped into the centermost cultivation chamber in the area. Walking in, Wang Chong noticed that the chambers were all crafted using metal. Another aspect that caught his attention was the exceedingly flat and smooth ground, reminiscent of the surface of a mirror. Inscriptions could be seen on the ground at fixed intervals. Wang Chong realized that even though it was only the first day, there were already many new recruits seated within the chamber, deep in cultivation. This area is crafted using top-notch metal. An inscription for gathering spiritual energy has been carved below, turning all of these seats into a small spiritual energy gathering formation. In the future, you will be able to use this place as often as you like. Cultivating within these chambers will be much more efficient than cultivating anywhere else. Zhao Qianxiu led the group through the cultivation chamber. Behind the cultivation chambers is the cultivation ground. In the depths of the cultivation area, a dozen fully armored Imperial Army members stood guard in front of a grand hall, dividing the front part of the cultivation ground from the latter part. The martial art manuals in the cultivation grounds are divided based on their tier. Origin Energy Tier 6 martial arts are placed in one region, Origin Energy Tier 7 martial arts are placed in another, and so on. In the future, choose the cultivation techniques best suited for you based on your respective cultivation realms. The cultivation techniques stored here are all top-notch, and it'll be hard to find any techniques of similar quality outside. However, as my students, you'll be different from the other recruits. About this, you will understand in the future. Other than Wang Chong, the other students all revealed perplexed expressions. However, Zhao Qianxiu didn't elaborate on the matter. Following which, Zhao Qianxiu led the group to familiarize with the area, and just like that, the tour came to an end. Some of you may already know of it, but I'll just say it once more for the benefit of the others. Beneath a lush Chinese scholar tree at the top of the mountain, Zhao Qianxiu gave his final lesson of the day to the group. The origin energy realm can be divided into 9 tiers, which is origin energy tier 1 to tier 9. Upon reaching origin energy, one will be able to learn strength type, speed type, and dexterity type cultivation techniques. At origin energy tier 9, one will be able to release one's internal energy, forming a circular area of air pressure ripples just like this. Xianxia stomped his feet, and Wang, a circular milky white origin energy ripple diffused from beneath his feet. The ripple looked completely normal, but a grim expression appeared on Wang Chong, Zhao Jingdian, and the other recruits' faces. Within the circular ripple, everyone could feel Zhao Qianxia's ridiculously immense strength. Clearly, the other party hadn't given it his all previously. Once one gains the ability to release one's internal energy, origin energy will be able to take on many forms. Fighting will transcend beyond mere movements, just like this. With his palms facing downward, Zhao Qianxia did a grabbing action and the milky white ripple beneath his feet shook. A powerful surge of origin energy burst forth from Zhao Qianxia's palm, and it slowly morphed into the shape of a lion, following which the origin energy morphed into the shape of a tiger, panther, and then a wolf. The flexible control of origin energy adds an additional dimension to fights. Thus, if you were to meet with origin energy tier 9 experts, you must be careful. Experts of that level are extraordinarily troublesome, and you won't be able to deal with them easily. Saying so, Zhao Qianxia gently jerked his palm, and the wolf-shaped origin energy surged out. Boom! Several dozen zhang away, a boulder exploded. Dust cloaked the area. The hearts of the group skipped a beat. Beyond origin energy tier 9 is the true martial realm. At that realm, one would be able to gather his origin energy beyond his body, forming a halo. However, that is a matter for the future. After explaining all of these, Zhao Qianxiu left. Are you Wang Gongzi? After Zhao Qianxiu left, a few figures walked up to Wang Chong and bowed deeply to him. I am Zhuang Zhengping. I am Qi Weici. Paying respect to Gongzi. The duo was no other than the other 2 recruits who passed Zhao Qianxiu's test. From the test location till here, the both of them hadn't spoken a word. It was only after Zhao Qianxiu left that they stepped forward to pay their greetings. Are you 2 from the Zhuang clan and Qi clan? Wang Chong stared the duo before him. That's right. The duo bowed respectfully. Wang Chong assessed the 2 of them carefully. The Zhuang clan and Qi clan were behemoths in the capital, and their influence was far beyond that of ordinary prestigious clans. The 2 clans were extremely skilled in commercial activities, and their business expanded across the entire world. At the same time, they also possessed considerable power within the military as well. In the Zhuang clan's 100 years of history, many of their offsprings had enlisted into the military and took up various differing positions throughout the organization, thus forming a sizable influence. The Zhuang clan's offsprings were known for being valiant, and their steel cavalry was extremely famous in the empire. As for the Qi clan, their reputation was slightly beneath that of the Zhuang clan, but the overwhelming number of experts in their clan made them a force to be reckoned with. Their silhouettes could almost be seen almost everywhere on the front lines of the battlefield. What that made Qi clan stand out from the others were their steel guards. Whenever a Qi clan offspring stepped onto the battlefield, they would be accompanied by a sizable amount of Qi clan steel guards. Each of these guards would be equipped with a Xian metal plate mail that weighed around 400 jin and a halberd which height easily reached up to a man. On the battlefield, they were often able to tear open a hole in the enemy's defenses, creating an opening for the other soldiers to exploit. Even though the 2 clans were still inferior to the Wang clan, their strength wasn't one to be underestimated. Just by the fact that the 2 of them were able to pass Zhao Qianxiu's test proved testimony to their might. Given the Zhuang clan and Qi clan's influence, shouldn't you 2 be in Longwei or Shenwei? Wang Chong asked with slightly narrowed eyes. In truth, we only chose to come to Kunwu training camp after hearing the news that Gongzi is coming here. Gongzi's upright and noble personality has won the respect of both our Zhuang clan and Qi clan, and thus, we hope to stand by your side. Zhuang Zhengping and Qi Weici said respectfully. In truth, their strength was on par with the current Wang Chong and Zhao Jingdian. What the two of them were truly deferential toward was the immense influence that stood behind Wang Chong. The Wang clan was a clan of general and ministers, and Duke Jiao was a meritorious subject who helped the current emperor to the throne, thus earning him the favor and trust of the latter. But the influence of the Wang clan didn't stop there. There was still King Song, the officials of the royal court, the protectorates by the borders, and the various conferred generals and Han generals. The storm not too long ago had made many realize that they had been severely underestimating the Wang clan. That massive influence that extended beyond the royal court and into the military. Even behemoths like Zhuang clan and Qi clan couldn't help but feel deference. Just from that matter itself, it could be foreseen that even if Duke Jiao were to pass away, the prosperity and influence of the Wang clan could sustain for a very, very long time. This was the reason why the prestigious clans like Zhuang clan and Qi clan sent their offsprings to Kunwu training camp instead of Xinwei and Longwei. After the verdict from the sage emperor, Wang Chong was labeled as the rising power of the political scene. What was even rarer was that he was extremely young, being just 15 at the moment, and thus, his influence had yet to fully take shape. If they were to intervene now and establish a relationship with him, it might prove to be immensely beneficial to their clans in the future. Most of the clans who sent their offsprings here were harboring such thoughts. The words of the duo were hinting at their clan's intention to establish an intimate relationship with the Wang clan. "You two are being too polite," Wang Chong chuckled. "Since we're all in Kunwu training camp, not to mention fellow students under instructor Zhao, we can be considered as peers. We should indeed get along well." The duo was overjoyed. Wang Chong's words were a clear approval of them. "Wang Gongzi, this is a token of appreciation from our clan. We hope that Gongzi can accept it." The duo took out a burgundy silk box from their sleeves each and presented it with a deep bow. They weren't presenting just gifts in their capacity as individuals. They were acting as intermediaries for their clans. After a short moment of silence, Wang Chong took the two boxes from their hands. "Gongzi, we won't disturb you any longer. If you have any needs, feel free to instruct us." Saying so, the duo took their leave. Gongzi, such prestigious clans tend to hold their interests as priority. Zhuang Zhangping and Qi Weisi are only offsprings of the third generation. I fear that their words cannot be trusted. Looking at the departing back of the duo, Zhao Jingdian advised quietly. "I know," Wang Chong replied softly. Just the credibility of prestigious clans were doubtful in itself. Not to mention, the two clans chose to send out two ordinary offsprings who didn't have much of a standing within their ranks. However, Wang Chong had his own considerations as well. The Zhuang clan's cavalry and the Qi clan's foot soldiers were both elite troops. In the future battlefield, Wang Chong could use all the help he could get. Only by gathering the might of all of the prestigious and noble clans and uniting them together as one would he be able to change the ultimate destiny of the Central Plains. This was the very reason why Wang Chong joined Kunwu training camp. Thus, why would he reject the goodwill of Zhuang clan and Qi clan?